Okay, good morning, everybody. We're starting a new Sefer Shemot. So, number one is a lot going on in Parshat Shemot, right? Moshe Rabbeinu becomes Moshe Rabbeinu, so the first piece is from Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky in the Emes Yaakov. And he's going to say something very special. The whole piece it looks like a short piece, but there's a lot here. And what he's saying at the end is quite a remarkable idea. So we know that the miraculous Bitya, the daughter of Paro, went out with her maids and saw Moshe Rabbeinu in the teva, right? His mother, they had put him in a teva with a prayerful hope, with a chuppah on it, that he will reach chuppah when Paro was threatening to destroy all the Bechorim, right? We're all familiar with that. So miraculously, she stuck out her hand and she brought him in. The Kotzker Rebbe says it's impossible. Right? It's impossible. How could she, right? The word amma means an amma is like 24 inches according to some, right? So if you want to do something, it happens, the Kotzker Rebbe says. You know, you hear these stories about somebody under a car, dying under a car, and a guy will come and he'll get the adrenaline, somehow lift the front of the car and save these stories that exist. These stories have taken place, right? I mean, you know this from your practice, right? So, okay, so she sees that he wasn't wasn't nursing. So she says, I'm going to bring you a Jewish woman to nurse you. Pirush Rashi, shehechzirato al hamitzriyot harbe linak. She passed him around to many Egyptian women to nurse. Velo yanek. He didn't take, right? Lefi shehaya atid ledaber im hashchina. Right? This is Rashi. Because, why didn't he take from an Egyptian woman? Because this Moshe Rabbeinu is eventually, that same mouth that is going to take milk from an Egyptian woman is going to be speaking to the Ribbono Shel Olam, peh al peh, he spoke to the Ribbono Shel Olam, right? So it can't be, right? We're going to come back to that. Ayin Sefer Sifsei Chachamim. So, Shehik Shuzal. Sifsei Chachamim, if you look in the Chumash, Sifsei Chachamim is one of the primary super commentaries on Rashi, and he asks, Makshim minalan de mishum sha'atid ledaber im Shechina. Who says that's the reason? That because he's going to eventually speak to the Shechina. Dilma dehine makir imo. Maybe he recognizes his mother and he won't take from anybody else. Shekvar haya ben gimel chadashim. He was already 3 months old, right? Chadashim, right? V'yesh lomar. No, he says, Diksiv vatitz benehu, that he was hidden. So mistama b'makam choshech, so it was dark, right? So that wouldn't be the reason, because he can't see who it is. V'im kain, mistama lo haya makir et imo ad kan lashonos. He didn't recognize his mother. Aval be'emet b'gemara ksubas, there's a Gemara that says, Amrin and Suma, mana yada, amar avashi, braisa, berecha uvetaima. So the Gemara says that someone who is sight impaired, who's blind, has extra sensory perception with other senses, right? A blind person his sense of smell and his sense of taste is very powerful. So here too, let's say he couldn't see who was nursing him, but he still would recognize his mother from the reach, from the tam, right? V'dochek lomar the dafka hu makir al yidei recha v'tam. But he says, hard to say that he would only recognize him right there, right? Ve'efsher dezeu dafka achar sheyonik. That's after, maybe, but after he nursed from her, right? Aval ze lo hitchil linok. Who said he began to nurse from his mother yet, right? We don't know that. So we were back to square one, that he might never have nursed from his mother, right? Aval be'emet, Nira de kivan de hadiuku mimasha amra min ha'ivriot. But the giveaway is that Rashi is very medactic here. She went to get someone min ha'ivriot, from the Jewish women, right? Lebat Paro, that's what she said. Im kain al korchech shetalta she'ena rotzeh linak b'isha mitzrit. So obviously she had determined that he will not nurse from the Egyptian women. Ulezeh pirush Rashi daita shel Miriam. So that's what Miriam thought. Miriam understood that that's what's going to happen, right? Miriam, and she didn't want to let that happen. Okay, he's going to be speaking to the Rabbanu Shalom. Now, he moves on. Halach in Shulchan Aruch. What's wrong with the Egyptian nursemaid, right? Technically nothing. Divrei Rashi, Elo huvo lahalacha b'Ramah. This Rashi is brought in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Ramah, in Siman Pei Aleph, in Yoreh De'ah, the laws of kashrus. V'zeh l'shono, quote, this is the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch. Chalav mitzrit ki chalav Yisraelit. Egyptian woman's milk, nurse milk, is the same as a Jewish woman's. Umikol makom, that being said, in other words, it's not treif. It's not treif. But mikol makom, that being said, lo yaniku tinok mina mitzrit. One should avoid a Egyptian nursemaid, a non-Jewish nursemaid, im efshar b'Yisraelit, if it's possible to find a Jewish nursemaid. Dechalav ovedet chochavim mitamtem halev, because the milk of an idol-worshipping person, right, affects the heart, the spirituality. Umolidlo tevara, and creates a bad character. Now, we always hear people say, well, the reason for kashrus is trigonosis. What do we need that for? We have science today. The truth of the matter is there is a problem of trigonosis with pig's meat, right? But that being said, it's not a problem of physical impairment. Treif is a problem of spiritual impediment. If the Torah says you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat milk and meat together, you shouldn't use the milk of a mitzrit, right? It's mitamtem et halev. There's a spiritual problem of these things. Ayin sham b'bir Gra. Now, what does the Gra say? His commentary, the Gra's commentary in the Shulchan Aruch. B'shem HaRashba, he quotes the Rashba, who was a Rishon. Shemekor hadavar hu. What's the source of this? That really technically you can nurse from an Egyptian woman, but you shouldn't really do it, right? Because it's mitamtem. What's the source? So the Gra quotes the Rashba, says the source is Moshe Rabbeinu. Shesirev linok et hamitzriot min hamitzriot mishum shaya atid ledaber im hashchina. The source is Moshe Rabbeinu, because he refused. The baby would not take from the Egyptian women because he was going to eventually speak to that's the source of this whole halacha, right? Ayin sham. This is his question he asked now. I don't get it. What does Moshe Rabbeinu have to do with every Jewish child? Okay? How can you say that this is the halacha for every Jewish child? That was Moshe Rabbeinu. He's going to speak Pa'al Pa'em HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ma kan mefurash hatam shelo yanek mishum shati ledaber im hashchina. He's going to speak to God. V'im kein, he says, mana lan shekein hadin etzel kol echad. Why is this the same with every Jewish child? And then he says in one line, Kikol echad atid ledaber im hashchina. Every Jewish child can potentially speak to the Shechina. Umevur mizeh limud gadol be'inyan chinuch shetzarech ha'av litein. The best, because who knows? Who knows? What's going to happen to this child? What kind of godless and Torah he's going to have, how holy this child's going to be. Every Jewish child, in other words, when it comes to Jewish education, when it comes to Torah chinuch, don't go for mediocrity. Don't say, this is enough for me. Go the extra mile to give our children Torah. You never know who your child is going to be. I know from my experience in yeshiva, there were guys in yeshiva that I thought were going to really go places. And there were other guys that I thought, sadly, I don't think they're, I see, I'm not going to mention names, it's not important, but there are certain people that I never thought, they're unbelievable Gedolei Torah today, tremendous Marbitze Torah, or very big doctors even, right? And some of the others who I thought were headed to what didn't really, didn't happen, right? So you never know, right? You never know. But Rabbi Yaakov is saying, this is not a joke. The source is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is for every Jewish child. Don't compromise in what we give over to our children or our grandchildren, we should have to give them the best. Okay, next piece is a kind of a grammatical piece from Rav Schwab. We have, when they're going out of Mitzrayim, he tells them, when you go out of Mitzrayim, the women should ask for all the jewels, gold and silver and clothing from the Egyptians and take them, right? V'sha'ala isha mishakanta. Every Jewish woman should request from their neighbor, umigarat beita, klei kesef, klei zahav, gold and silver, v'simlot, usmalot, v'samtem al benechem v'al benotechem, v'nitzaltem at Mitzrayim, and take them out, put them on your children, take all the clothes and the gold and the silver. It's yours. You have to ask for it. You should ask for it, right?
That's lying.
Pardon me?
That's lying. That's not.
No, this was from God. So we'll discuss that. I wouldn't say it's like. If we have any comments after, because we're recording now. So first of all, he asked for and they gave it to him. So there's I don't know what the lie is exactly. He asked for the clothing, and the women gave the clothing, right? So this was what happened, and there's another place in Chumash where you see the word sha'al, and that's ma Hashem Elokecha sho'el mi'imcha. This is not on the sheet; we'll come to it. But we're going to compare and contrast this. God says, "What do I ask?" Moshe says, "Ma Hashem Elokecha sho'el mi'imcha." What does Hashem ask of you? Ki im liyira. Only fear of Hashem. That's it. Yiras Hashem. That's all God wants from you, is to have a sense of yira, a sense of awe, a sense of reticence in relating to the Ribono Shel Olam, okay? That's the asking there, right? So we're going to come back to that, okay? Now he's going to say something very important. There are two usages of the word sho'el in Ivrit, right? Shebechol makom shenemar she'ela b'tanach. Whenever she'ela is mentioned in Tanakh, hakavana inyan bakasha. It's requesting. I'm asking you to give me something, right? They can refuse or not refuse. Here, they didn't refuse. They gave it, right? So, va'al kain, ksiv she'ela me'et ploni, o mi ploni, kagon, you ask v'sha'ala isha mishkan, and he gives the example. Ask of your neighbor for these clothing, right? Aval b'makom, there's another usage of the word she'ela. What's that? B'makom sha'kavana inyan halva'a v'she'ela. To be shoel, is to borrow something, right? Shoel is also a lashon of borrowing, she'ela, right? Kegon, quotes psukim, v'chi yishal ish me'im re'eh, when you borrow something from your neighbor, right? You borrow something, you have to give it back, right? Right? Lo amra haTorah. So here's the difference. When it says borrowing, when the translation is to borrow, it's Yishael ish me'im re'ehu. Right? Why? Me'im. Because the ownership of the object belongs to that person. So you're sort of sharing it. The borrower and the lender are sharing the property. So I'm borrowing it me'im, from with the word with, right? In other words, it's with. It's still owned by the lender, right? Shemayri b'shoel, lo amra Torah me'et. It doesn't say me'et. Me'et is just from, right? That's from, but from with, right? That's how you translate, literally would translate me'et. Me'et re'ehu, hamora al lekichat davar mechavero, ve'elo me'im re'ehu, right? Shehachefetz nishar tachat ba'alut hamashil, because you say, I want to borrow it, so it's me'im, I'm borrowing it me'imcha, because you still own it, so it's still emu, it's with you and it's with me, right? Ela shelokeach mimenu, but when you take something from someone, when you ask for something, I'm asking you to give me this, right? Lefi shah, even if it's for an hour, right? Mashadayin im habaylim dahainu hishtatfut, it's not v'kaya. So here, when you say me'et, right, you're taking it from them, right? And here it says clearly, v'sha'ala isha mi shrenta, from them. Doesn't say mi-8, mi-im. It's just from them, right? V'yeshli, so here's my problem, right? Yeshli ashev, kinei amar chazal. How does this work exactly? So here, no, I'm sorry. It says, I think I left something out here. Well, let's see. V'yeshli shol, yeshli ashev. The last line. The second pasuk, v'kasheh. Here's the question he asks, at the end of the first paragraph. Mi pasuk zeh she'atzorach lomar, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel. Now, it should say shoel mimcha. That pasuk from Devorim, that Moshe says, all God asks of you is to fear him. It's ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mi'imecha. That means that he's not giving it to us. He's lending us Yirah Shamayim. The Yirah Shamayim stays with him. So really it should be Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mimcha. What is God asking from you? He wants you to take that Yirah Shamayim, to take it and run with it, right? So that's what should be. So that's our question here. Why is it that in Yirah Shamayim, the Torah says mi'imcha, it stays with God? He wants you to have Yirah Shamayim, right? That's his question. V'yeshli ashev. So I'm going to answer the question. Kinei amru chazal, the rabbis say, hakol bidei shamayim chutz mi yirat shamayim. Everything is in the hands of God except fear of God. Shenemar, based on this pasuk, this is where it comes from. V'ata Yisrael, now Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mi'imcha. What does Hashem ask of you? Ki im liyira, only to fear, right? Now, Sha'al ha'adam la'amol ulahasig ha'yira me'atzmo. In other words, a person has to develop Yirah Shamayim, right? You can't just say, okay, I believe in God, I fear God, right? Ve'enu nitenet lo b'matana. It's not a gift. You have to daven to the Ribono Shel Olam, right? It's with Him. That power is with the Ribono Shel Olam, right? Amnam lefizet tzarich bir masha anu mitpalim b'chol yom. We always daven to Hashem v'yachel levavenu le'avo li'yireh shmecha. Give us the power. Give us the power to love you and to fear you. But you told me I got to develop it, right? Right? V'nira shemereshit ha'avodah chiyuv al yirat shemayim b'tor biyad ha'adam she'ahu atzmo mevin libo liyirato mechin libo liyirato. The first part of the process is that a person has to say, I'm going to be a Yireh Shamayim. I want to get into this Torah. I want to get into this mitzvahs. I have to do it. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to try to do it myself, right? Ve'ein nitan lo bin hashamayim. It's not given to him. It's not gifted to him. You have to work on Yireh Shamayim, right? Right? Then, va'im ein ani li mili. If I'm not for myself, who's going to be for me? I got to do it. Va'achar shenitrasha bekirbo mirat hayir. But once the year is in his system, he feels that sense. Az meitivi mo HaKadosh Baruch Hu min hashamayim. Then God gifts him. He gifts him. Notnim belibo yira. He gives him the yira. So it really always remained with the Ribono Shel Olam. That's why it's mi'im. He says, all he asks of us is to fear him. But it should be, he wants us to fear. No, it's mi'im. He wants to develop nimtza tchilat avodato be'inyan hayira hu sheshoel HaKadosh Baruch Hu mi'imo yirat Shamayim begeder she'ela, right? V'halva. We're asking the Ribono Shel Olam to lend it to us. Mi'im. We're asking him, lend us the Yireh Shamayim kavayochel, k'dei lachziro lanu b'siyata d'shmaya, and we'll return it to you. In other words, there's a relationship. The whole idea of Yirat Shamayim, to be a religious Jew, is not, that I do the mitzvahs, and what about God? It's a very serious problem in Jewish education today. That we're discovering, and there's a lot of literature on this, wonderful literature on this on Chinuch HaTorah, that kids, what about God? They're learning Gemara, they're learning Chumash, they're learning all these mitzvahs they have to do, but where about the Ribono Shel Olam? And kids, a bright kid will say that. Where does God fit in? I want to have a sense that I feel a relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. You're telling me to do this, and I can't do this, and I can do this, and I can't do this, and Shor Shanarach Zapara, if your cow hits my cow. But where's the Ribono Shel Olam, right? So we assume too much, right? So a lot of focus now in Chinuch, in primary grades, is on this Emunah B'Hashem, on emunah and bitochen b'Hashem, on mi'imcha, developing a relationship with Ribono Shalom. That's why the word imcha is used here. Okay? Let's move on to the next piece, which will take most of our time now. If we have time at the end, I want to just put a PS here, but let's go to Rav Hutner. So you have number 4 and 5 are psukim. In Rashi, let's go to 5. Leave 4 for now. This is a lead up to something that Rav Hutner is going to teach us. So, again, so much in this parsha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, I want you to take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. You're the man, right? And Moshe refuses. 4 times, 5 times. Moshe refuses. I'm not the man. I'm not the person. My brother Aaron, he's older than me, right? I have a speech impediment, which maybe we'll speak about next week a little bit, right? I'm not the person to take them out, right? Vayichar af Hashem b'Moshe, and God got angry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu got angry at Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayomer halo Aaron achicha halevi yadati. You have a brother Aaron, the Levi, your brother. Yadati ki daber yidaber hu. He'll speak for you. Don't worry. That's not going to be a problem. I'm going to involve your brother, all your problems. I'm going to involve your brother, and he's going to speak for you. Your speech impediment, your covet of Aaron, right? V'gam hinei hu yotzei likros, and look, he's coming to meet you now. V'rocha v'sameach b'libo, and very happy to see him. He wasn't jealous. He didn't care, right? Right. But here's the problem. Whenever the Ribono Shalom is angry in Tanakh, there are terrible consequences. That is a rule in Tanakh. Whenever the Ribono Shalom is angry, there are consequences, right? So now Rav Hutner. La'achar she'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe, lecha ve'ashlacha el Paro, I'm sending you to Paro, hotzi et ami b'nei Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, take out my people from Mitzrayim. Hitchil Moshe liton, Moshe argued, al shlichut zu, he said no, right? He refused. And we'll skip all the Yiddish, he puts in a lot of Yiddish here, right? Lehitvakeach. He got into an argument with the Ribono Shalom. Ad shesof katuv vayichar af Hashem b'Moshe. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at him. Umevi sham Rashi. Rashi brings Divrei Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, kol charon af shebetorah. That was we had on 4. I'm just going to do it inside. Whenever there's anger in the Torah, right? Nemar bo roshem. There is a consequence. V'zeh lo nemar bo roshem. But here there's no consequence. You don't see any punishment, any consequence of the anger. You get angry when God gets angry. You know there's going to be a consequence. V'lo matzinu shebo onish al yedei oto charon. There was no punishment to Moshe because of the anger that HaKadosh Baruch Hu felt for what he did. Ve'aleinu lahavin eich ze efshar sheyeh charon af me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo roshem. How can there be anger from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not to have a reaction to what he was angry about, to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay? So in other words, what is unique about this moment of anger and this conversation between this vikuach, between this dialogue, this debate between Moshe and the Ribono Shalom that makes it very different, right? It's not stum anger here. Something else is afoot. Okay? He brings an example. And from this example, we're going to see that there's such a thing of saying no, even to the Ribono Shalom, when you're offered to do something. A certain part of greatness is humility, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person in the world. I'll give you a halachic example. When the Gabbai says, I want you to daven Shachris, right? First you refuse. The halacha is, thank you very much for thinking of me. No, all right. Second time the third time you can go up and daven. That's the halacha. With an aliyah also, I'm going to give you a aliyah. No, unfortunately, people are a little different with that, you know. Why is he getting aliyah? I haven't had an aliyah in 3 days, right? You know, it's yada. Okay, but that's the halacha. You have to be reticent. You have to refuse, and B'She Eliyahu. So listen to this. Where does that come from? Keshe Eliyahu ratzah lahachriz b'har Carmel. Now you know the Maisa on Har Carmel. Eliyahu Hanavi and the Baal, the idol worshippers of Baal. There was a moment, a test, that who's going to win, the Ribono Shel Olam or Baal. The fire's going to come down. They each had a calf. They each had a korban, and where the fire from heaven will come down. If it comes down for your calf, then you're the winner. If it comes down on my calf, then the Ribono Shel Olam is the winner. Then I'm right? So this is what happened, right? So you needed 2 calves for this, okay? Kisheliyahu ratzah lahachriz b'har Carmel, sh'Hashem hu Elokim. His goal was to say Hashem hu Elokim. God is God, right? That was the victory. She'ovdei habal yakiru be'afasut avodatam. They would realize the ephes, the nothingness, the emptiness of their avoda. Lakach shnei, here's the thing. Lakach shnei parim shavim. He took 2 exact calves. Echad l'shem Hashem. One was going to be for God. Ve'echad labal. And one was going to be used by the Avodah Zarah people, right? Vayiru al eze mehen tered eish milamal. And we'll see for which one the fire came down from heaven. Yesh bechazal, so the Medrash tells us, shehapar shehaya Eliyahu rotzeh lishloch lebal nitakesh. The calf that Eliyahu sent to be with the Baal, with the idol worshippers, he balked. He didn't want to go. He refused, right? V'lo zu b'mekomo shetana shaharigam hu v'gam chavero shneim. Listen, why should I go? Me and the other guy were shneim need gadlo. We grew up together. V'achlu yachid me'oto avos. We ate from the same trough, right? V'lama im kain yizkeh hapar ha'acher lichashev b'korban l'Hashem. How come my friend, the calf, becomes, right? Now, by the way, did this actually take place, right? This is a medrash, right? It goes back to the old, it's a very important discussion. That's a PS to put in here, right? Is everything in the medrash true, word for word, in Haggadah, the stories, or is it a metaphor? So this is a machlokas. The machlokas between the Maral and the Marsha, between great thinkers. Some say that no, everything this happened. These calves talk to each other, right? Well, we know there's precedent for that. We had Bilam's donkey, right? But even that I don't want to go there. But we are really Talmidim of the Maral. We're Talmidim of the Maral Prague, who says that these medrashim are not necessarily actual events, but they're metaphors. It's a metaphor, right? It didn't necessarily happen that this took place, but it's a metaphor, right? It's a mashal, right? So let's continue with the mashal. Why am I going to the idol? Eliyahu said to him, listen, just the opposite. Listen, the matter? This is great. You have a great opportunity. Yigdash Shem Shemayim al Yado. You're going to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. Without you, there wouldn't be Kiddush Hashem, right? Ki iladav, without you, lo yeh hechetimtza lo chiach ki Hashem hu Elokim. We wouldn't be able to prove that God is God, right? If there's only one calf, that's not going to prove anything, right? But if there's one that it didn't go to, right, that's you're doing a Kiddush Hashem. Im kein mishamesh hu kli l'ribui kavod shemayim. So you are really a vessel for bringing in the glory of heaven, right? Ve'ein lihi maneh mishlichut. So don't hesitate. Aval hapar adayin amad b'mekom. What the par was stayed in his stubborn position. Ve'Eliyahu holicho bal korcha. And Eliyahu had to pull him. He had to pull him against his will to do it, but he went. The calf went, but he had to be pulled to go. Right? Al divrei chazal elu. On this story, right in the Medrash. Haya Reb Itzel mi Peterburg nosei mashalo al yesod havoda. He used this story to speak about a very basic, fundamental point in hashkafa, in machshava, in Jewish thought, right? Who was Rav Yitzchak Peterburg? Rav Yitzchak Peterburg, we've mentioned him in the past. He was Rav Yitzchak Blazer, one of the 3 outstanding students of Rav Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement, and he became the rabbi of St. Petersburg. That's why he's called Rav Yitzchak Peterburger, right? How did he become the rabbi of St. Petersburg? I might have told you this a long time ago. He was a very humble person, right? And his wife had a store, like a grocery store, and he sat in the back room and he learned Torah and he wrote Torah. So a massive gaon. And the leaders of St. Petersburg heard about him. People knew who he was. And they came to St. Petersburg to ask him to become their rabbi. And they found him, not in the base medrash, they found him in the back of the store, right, as the story goes, right? And they said, we want you to become our rabbi, the rabbi of St. Petersburg. He says, I can't. I said, why? He says, I'm afraid to paskin. I'm afraid to paskin a shayla. I'm afraid to paskin a shayla. So you know what they said to him? You're hired. We don't want somebody that you'll ask a question and they'll say, all right, yeah, mutter, it's usher, or, I once made a fatal mistake in my early years as a rabbi. A woman asked me a shayla, and I said to her, oh, that's not a shayla. It's okay. She was insulted. When I said it's not a shayla, she thought I meant she's asking a stupid question. You have to be careful with what you say to people, right? That's not what I meant, obviously. Oh, it's not a shayla, it's not a problem, don't worry, right? But one has to be very careful. Chachamim hisaru b'divreichem, right? So every question is an important question. And it has to be dealt with, right? But here, this story of Isla dovetails with this whole piece of Torah here, right? So that's so he became the Rav of St. Petersburg, right? Okay? But now let's get back to what he said. He brought this story to present a very important lesson, and it really relates to this true story about himself as well, right? But he's going to relate it back. We're going to relate it back. Rav Hutner is going to relate it back to Moshe Rabbeinu in a minute. The idea is, she'af al pi, she'yeshnam dvorim shemechayvim lasot. There are certain things we have to do in life. They're not pleasant. There are certain things that I have to do in life. Not everything is glory. I got to do certain things, right? Right? Muchrachim lasot, we got to do them. Even though I don't like it, I got to do it, right? V'yul toelet. There's a reason why the Rebbe Shalom wants me to do this, right? V'lo yitakein belav hachi. It doesn't work without that, right? Umikol makom, however, im yesh behem ezet sad shel pegam, by the way, afilu pegim edaka, if there's an avera involved, even a little bit, v'lo shel ra, not bad, asur lomar, al ha-mechayev lehaasot. You can't tell a person to do something if it's an avera, right? I'm telling you to do an avera, right? Sheyesh bo mishum ra. That's evil. You can't do that, right? But there are certain things that you might not see the utility of it, or you might not want to admit that it's really for you to do it. It's not for me to do it, right? But they have to be done. Einam tzrichim lehaasot glat. Glat. So don't jump to do it, right? Somebody comes to you and says, I want you to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. Oh, where have you been all this time? I've been waiting for you, right? The response has to be, right, there are times when, wait a minute, you got the wrong guy. This is not for me, right? You have to be derech siruv. You have to be hesitant. You have to balk. You have to be hesitant. So what was going on here was a game of Kaviyachol, mental gymnastics between Kaviyachol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why this charonaf, this anger, was not the real kind of anger that deserves a punishment, right? This was a test of Moshe Rabbeinu's greatness, right? Right? I expected him to say no, right? Dugmat otopar, like this calf. Right? She'af al pi shehalichato hayta mechayevet lalechet labal. His responsibility was to go. He had to be sacrificed, right? Mikol makom, he's in Yiddish, skip the Yiddish. Hayut tzrichim laholichito. He had to go with him. This is what he was chosen for, right? Now, the calf might not have known that, but the calf somehow balked. For some reason, this calf, and maybe we'll see next week another piece from something else, that there's in the Bria, there is something, even in the animal world, there is a sense of divinity. There's a sense of godliness, right? Something we're going to see next week in Yud Hashem. I actually saw a piece yesterday I'm going to use next week. I'm not going to tell you now. I'm taking too much time going on the sides. Kacha mizdamnin lo b'chai adam. So too in man's life. kol mine pu'ulot shemochiach lasotam. There are many things that we have to do, right? Mikol makom im yesh behen sad defikat halev. My heart is I'm shaking. I mean, this is not for me. I can't do this, right? Skip the Yiddish. Ein dai pu'ula zu derech siruv, right? Tzarech sheyeh murgash bo derech siruv. You have to be hesitant a little bit. The hesitance part of the thing. Ad kan divrei Rav Itzla. In other words, like this halacha with the going up to daven for the Yomim. You be hesitant, but in the end you go up and you daven, right? But you can't jump to go and right? Ubir zeh aleinu lahavin et chilufei hadvarim shebein Moshe laHaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we have to understand this conversation, this dialogue, this debate, this vikuach between Moshe and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Be'inyan shlichuto lahotzi et Yisrael Mitzrayim, in sending him to take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. Bevarai she letoeleti. Obviously, it has to be done, right? V'tzarech lalechet b'shlichut zu. Moshe knew he had to do it. He knew he had to do it, right? He knew who he was. Moshe knew who he was. Anivut, by the way, modesty, humility, the definition of humility is not that I'm a nebuch. I'm a nebuch and I don't know who I am. I'm just a nobody, right? That's not modesty. That's stupidity, right? That's foolishness. That's a fool. I've mentioned, I think, in the past about Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein, the great Gadol Posek Dor for us, right? When he started, how did Rav Moshe become Rav Moshe, right? Well, there's a whole story, I don't want to go into that, but Rav Moshe was a very humble person. And he writes in the beginning, in the introduction to his first volume of Igros Moshe, he basically says, who am I to answer these questions? But what can I do? I see that people are asking the questions, and nobody is answering the questions. The questions have to be answered. So I'm answering the questions, right? That was Moshe Rabbeinu, right? That was Rav Moshe Feinstein. Right? Ulam be'enei Moshe hayta shlichut zu krucha b'tzel shel miut demuto shel Aaron habechor mimenu. But for Moshe, he had a problem. What about my brother? I hear that I have to go to my brother. Aaron's older than me. Haya Moshe mitnaheg b'derech siruv. So he had to be. He pulled back. I really know that I'm the guy that I have to go. The Rebbe Shem's coming to me. I'm not a fool, but I have to. What about my brother Aaron? Right? I have to. Va'al lanu lahavin parshazu. We have to understand this parsha b'musag. Va'al yav lanu lahavin parshazu b'musag yaldutati. He says, Rav Hutner says, don't learn this parsha like a child. Right, sophomorically, right, is what he's saying. Don't learn this parsha b'musag yalduti. That's not what's that what? Sheyesh kan siruv muchlat. That he's saying, I don't want to go, I'm not going, b'vaday shelo. Lo hayta kan havamina lidachot hashlichut mikol v'kol lachzor habayta stam. Moshe was not saying, I'm going home, I'm out of here. This is not for me. That's foolish. Don't think that that's the pshat here. That's not the pshat here. That's sophomoric. Don't teach your children that pshat in this chumash, right? The part of the whole process of accepting this shlichut, he had to be dragged. This is part of the process of greatness. Is not to you, is to be humble also, right? Dugmat divrei Rabbi Itzla bepara sheholi, and that's the example that he gave. So now charonaf. The anger here is not the same kind it's an anger of a different kind. It's not a common denominator with every other anger. This was a game-playing kind of thing, kaviyachol, between the Ribbono Shel Olam and Moshe. So therefore there was no punishment afterwards. Ad kan magia gvul haderech siruv v'sulo. Until now, this is it, Moshe. Okay, time's up. I hear you. I know who you are. I know you. You want to balk. The balk. It's over. I know who you are. I'm taking you. You balked enough. You were misarev enough. Right now, let's talk tachlis. You got to go to Egypt. Time is wasting. Right? Hagat laket katza b'han hagazu ve'ein lamshich b'zeod. We got to move on to the next stage now. You're going. Sha'inu shechor anav zeh lo hivi kas shel taina o taruma. So this was not chas v'sholem anger, right? Ela hora'ah. al hagvul shel hasiruv hamodia shekvar higi azman lasim kates derech siruv. The anger was basically a statement, enough, okay? Game's over. The game's over, the buzzer goes, and I got you. You did what you had to do, and you're right, but now you go up and daven for the Omid. This is the first time. The second time, lahaloch, I asked you, you don't want to, but now it's time to take, right? So then he says, last paragraph, it's a beautiful idea, right? Now, the last paragraph here says something very interesting, beautiful. V'roim b'davar zeh, chov matila hayedia hazu, banu yachas shel chomer, mitoch ha'ol shel hachiyuv ilu shel lomdim, I just skip that. Just go to the last little paragraph. The last little paragraph. It's late. We got to stop. I got to stop. But he adds something here from the mashgiach of the Slobodka Yeshiva, the Alter from Slobodka, who was one of the greatest educators of the 19th and 20th century. And he was a genius in raising genius students. And he once said, this idea of reticence, of siruv, of not going, right? That's right. Pam achat omer hamashgiach. So the Alter once said, mitafkidi hamashgiach hu lirot. My job in the yeshiva is to see, skip the Yiddish, just the last line. Lo kol kach ein lomdim ela eich sogrim et hagemara. The Yiddish, when I sit in the back of the base medrash, which is where he sat, and it was lunchtime, he looked at the student, not how he's learning. A whole morning he's in the yeshiva, in the base medrash, watching the students interact with each other. Are they learning when they're in shir? Are they listening? Are they asking a good question? Are they asking a question? Are they there? No, what I really want to know the greatness of the student is not how he opens the Gemara, but when lunchtime comes, how does he close the Gemara? When it's lunchtime, does he want to still stay there? He's resisting, right? Like the calf resisted Eliyahu, or like Moshe resisted going to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that he didn't close the Gemara right away. He didn't run to the lunchroom, but he waited a few minutes, then closed the Gemara and reluctantly went to eat lunch. That was just bringing this idea into the base matters.